How's it going, ladies and gents? Honest Sarcastic here with the Hyperloops. So, I'll be honest, we didn't have shit to post today. So I'm doing a fucking tier list. And you know who hates tier lists? It's Bobby Sapphire. Why? I don't know. He hates them. I guess let's get kind of started off. I should have probably went and looked at the iRebel website for, pretty much what's been winning the regional events, because the only thing I really know is Vader. So now let's talk about kind of the decks and whatnot, and here's my rough breakdown of what these tiers are going to be. So now these tiers are not essentially locked. Stuff can always move around, but I'll give my reasonings on why. So the breakdown is that tier 1, normally speaking, really just doesn't have kind of like a weakness per se, or if it does, it has like one weakness, and like even then they can still like usually come out in an okay place against it, whereas like tier 1.5 has like a few different weaknesses. Normally speaking, they sit down, they probably lose to the tier 1 deck. Tier 2 and lower, pretty much for the most part, I just don't care about any of that shit, but there'll be like a bunch of glaring weaknesses, or let's say, one type of match they just absolutely can't win. So like, let's say your deck just can never win against any of the aggro decks. That'd probably make you tier 2, whereas if it was just a specific aggro deck that you couldn't beat, then it'd be like fine, or for specific control or specific mill deck. But if you lose to every single one of them, pretty much no matter what's going on, then you fuck you, like your deck sucks. And that's where tier 2 is. Like tier 2 could still win a tournament, because like the big thing that we got to understand is that like when you sit down and you get to, let's say, like a top 8 or top 16 or whatever, the real struggle was really getting to that stage and kind of doing well enough. From there, it's going to be like, all right, you're putting your skills to the test. You're in theory going to be playing against people that are also very skilled, and then you kind of just need to run good. So like the way I would say it is this is like, when you have that last reroll and you're like, all right, I'm looking for one of these 3 dice to hit one of these sides, it's like 66%, and then you like whiff and you're just like, or like completely whiff, and then you're like, oh, awesome, thanks, because you lived on the bad side of probability, and like, but if you ran well, like you might have hit all 3 of them and been like, jackpot, bitches. And then like just ruined and crushed the opponent. It's like those times where you beat out a Darksaber and then you hit like 3/3+4, and it's just like, woo! One shot that Sienna right off the table. Get out of here. But anyways, so and as a kind of warning, that Snoke deck that I played at Connecticut, I'm going to completely leave off of the list, because I'm still going through like the testing phases, and I personally love the deck, but since most of you wouldn't be aware of whatever it is, and the theory or the fact of the matter is that the deck list is pretty much paywalled, I think it's unfair for me to put that in the rankings. So I'm only going to go with stuff that's kind of really popped up and easily been used, and the deck list is relatively easily accessible. So for me right now, tier 1 pretty much goes to, I guess, 2 type. You could say 3 decks, I think, in theory, but I'm going to give it to 1 type of deck. And actually, I guess it's not even type because it's not fair. But anyways, it's pretty much Mill and Vader. So now the only reason I'm really giving Vader the tier 1 designation, even though I personally believe that it has a bunch of holes, is that if he's running decently well, he can just smush people. He doesn't even have to be hitting the nuts, because he has that many die sides he can hit. Just running, moderately well, and you crush people's souls. As well as like the weaknesses, more or less, for the deck. For most of the general populace, really don't know how to deal with him, and like that's huge. Like there are definitely very key ways to cope with playing against him. Stronger players are pretty much well aware of it this time. In most situations, most of the stronger players are actually just not playing Vader, because what ends up happening sometimes in like the other matches is you'll run into like a struggle, and Vader really doesn't have like any any kind of counter way to go. You need to like re-roll those dice till you get stuff you can use. And he doesn't have. There's like no real control sides coming out of that deck. It's really like I mitigate you. I do damage. I grab shields. I heal and grab my upgrade. Are you dead yet? Anyway, so Vader's gonna grab one of the slots in the tier 1, and in like, to be fair, he probably should just take the top designation just based on the number of wins he's been getting. Even though he doesn't normally kind of take over the entire top cut the ways that things like Pomaz and Rainbow Nines did back during SOR. He is getting to the top cut and then juggernauting through. And that says a lot about a deck. Because like in a best of 3, or there are decks that are like really good at best of 1, and then there are decks that are really good at best of 3. A deck that's really good at best of 3 will be like, alright, if I run bad, like I run real bad, I lose the game. But you shouldn't really run real bad in most case scenarios. So playing a deck like that means that, alright, when he runs good, he's crushing. It doesn't matter pretty much what's going on if he runs good. So like, let's say he does that 1 in 3 games, then you're really looking at, you only have to do 50-50 for the other 2 games, because like he was going to destiny the shit out of somebody in one of the 3, and like that could be another reason why he should absolutely be tier 1, and that's because he's that good in a best of 3. There's also kind of like less pressure throughout the entire event. You don't have to really think. In most scenarios, you don't have to think super duper hard. And I'm not saying this takes away from the skill level of the player. There will be certain scenarios where you have to like question what's going on, but in most of them, you don't have to like rack your brain trying to figure how to get some sort of obscene damage or flip these die sides and do this, then do that, then do, like he's just like smash your face, smash your face, smash your face, you're dead, smash your face, smash your face. Other guy's dead, I win. Woo! So it's something that'll be much more appealing in, let's say, that 7-round event that you're then going to have the top 8 and a bunch of best of 3s all one at a time, and then potentially no break in between. But usually speaking, there's some like 20 or 30 minute break where you can grab lunch or whatever. But yeah, so Vader goes there. I'd say Vader's real downfall is that stuff that kind of blocks damage does count as like a 1-for-1 mitigation against him. So like Force Illusion on whatever his main target is. You've got Suppressifier that needs to die. Healing, while it's not so great, does help a lot. Like Witch Magic, when those hit for 3s, is essentially like a piece of removal for his die. You do need actual removal for whatever upgrade he plays. Like if he gets a Darksaber, you need to be able to eat that shit. Like you can't take Darksabers to the face. Those are like 4s and 5s and triple discards and triple focuses. Like that's gonna ruin your life. So those you actually have to mitigate. But his actual dice, a lot of the time, you can kind of get away with just leaving whatever's there, or like not allowing, let's say, like the 4, and making him re-roll a few times to try to get back to 3 or 4. If you let's say hidden motive of 4, he goes away and then he gets the 2 back, you're just like, alright, well, hidden motive stop 2 damage, like I'm fine with that. But yeah, so like part of his issue would essentially be that he can get money off of his die sides real well. For the most part, I think the only real good event that he plays that can kind of generate like massive bonuses, or I guess there's 3 of them, are Price of Failure, which he can just completely obliterate somebody with. Friends in High Places, which if he hits any of the 3 or 5 drops, or 3 through 5 drops, like that's a massive bonus, because like any of those upgrades, Darksaber, Rise Again into heal into another upgrade, or even just like grabbing a Force Illusion off of Rise Again, like that's probably like 8 or 9 health. So that's like an extra 60-70% of his health. That's insane. And he's already a big boy at 15 health, so like you normally can't kill him till round 3, even if you're trying to focus him down. But like Indirect could essentially get there because Indirect's big enough. But yeah, so he can Destiny roll out. He can roll out with like that 1 upgrade and represent 6 through 10 damage pretty much without a huge issue. He doesn't do it, super often, but I'd probably say it's like 1 in 3 rolls. He's just gonna roll out, and it'll be like damage, big damage, and he's hitting you. He's bashing a guy potentially off the table right there. So yeah, Vader does take the 1 slot, or in one of the tier 1 slots. The other tier 1 slot I would say is Mill. So we've seen the revival of the Mill deck from Gen Con, Millpocalypse Now, or Millionaires, whatever the hell people want to call it. It's the 3-wide mill of Elite Yoda, 1 die Anakin 2, and 1 die Cassian. And now, so the big thing there is like, all right, you're like, well, it's mitigation. How do they deal with Vader? And like realistically, the way they really cope with Vader is via Force Jump. Force Jump kind of ruins Vader because he is only like, so what is it? He is 75% to essentially show damage when he rolls out, without counting any of his upgrades, but to show damage on both of his dice, he's actually only 25%, so 1 in 4 rollouts will show damage on both. So he's 50% to show it on 1 of his dice, and 25% to show it on 0. So like half of the time, he's only going to show it on 1. So if like he gets Force Jumped, he's got a blank now. And they get to reroll the Force Jump 33% to re-show the special. If Yoda is packing a special already, or just something along those lines, it's really annoying for Vader, because every time he has to go and pitch to reroll, it's almost the same as if he just kept power actioning that same die out over and over again. And it's a constant struggle for him to kind of maintain tempo there. Like for the most part, they can probably get away with just not playing any removal against like the Yoda deck. So like they can maintain that hand to get a few rerolls in, and you're trying to get damage, but like it's a vast amount of harassment. They do need to get the upgrade down sooner than later, so that the opponent has to struggle more, and you can kind of just get in more damage. Vader's Fist does a whole lot. Fear and Dead Men does a lot versus the 3-wide mill deck. But most of the other cards actually just don't do too much there. They're not doing damage, so the Rise Agains are bad. They in theory constantly mess with your dice, so Friends in High Places is really hard to get. If you do hit like the Nutter Butter rollout, you have to worry yourself about Beguile, potentially like easy picking, which would then force you to essentially roll out again. They can't really hit you with Entangle. Garbage Chute. So Garbage Chute will eat 2 of the dice, potentially like your upgrade and his character die. Then you got to pitch to roll it back out. So the thing is that like the Force Jump is actively screwing Vader real hard there, because he's having to actually essentially do a mill damage to himself in order to see if his die side will be viable enough to resolve. They've also essentially killed off your shield side, because your shield side's useless. So you really do have like 2 blanks there on his die. And then like if you have no resource, like you have the 4 for 1 as a blank, and then like the 2 is honestly probably not so amazing, but you take your 2 and get. Against a lot of the other decks, like Mill's very good at hitting like a pod racer, ripping some cards from hand, and kind of just like messing up your overall game plan. For a lot of decks, the game plan will be like, all right, play an upgrade, play a piece of mitigation, one kind of like wild card on whether they needed to like ramp a resource, play another upgrade, an additional piece of mitigation, probably like 2 rerolls. Not to mention any of the rounds where it's just like, oh, I wanted to play 4 speed and then like a 2-drop or something. So then like losing 2 cards from there, you have 1 reroll. It gets real tough for you. So like limiting people's rerolls, if they have dice that are kind of a struggle, like not amazing die sides to hit, it can be really tough, especially since 3-wide mill has 27 health. They probably lost the battlefield roll, so they're at 29 with the shields. But that's a lot of health for a lot of these decks to try to chew through when they're playing very aggressively. The other mill deck we're seeing is Yoda plus Leia 2. So this is the red Leia, in case you're mistaking it for the yellow one. And that one's kind of predicated similarly, but the mill setup is much faster because it has access to Commando Raid as well as Motivate. So anyone that doesn't know, Commando Raid requires you to have a red die showing a discard side. You increase that value by 2 and resolve it, and then you can draw a card. So it replaces itself while ruining your opponent's round, pretty much. Motivate, you have to have 2 red characters or Leia, and you can resolve a die, increasing the value by +1. So for Motivate, a lot of time you can like, oh, I got a disrupt showing, and I need a 2 disrupt before this Vader's Fist comes down, or I have the 2 discard, I want to make it 3 discard, whatever, get 2 resources, whatever you're trying to do. For the most part, Motivate's really just going to be for like additional discards, but you could grab 2 shields off of it when you're showing the shield side. You could be like, all right, Yoda's focus is now 2 focus is now 3 focus. There's a lot of different like small things you can do with it. If you do it off of like a 4 speed, there's a lot of tricks. And in general, yes, they do run 4 speed. So 4 speed into focus into quad discard blows out the round. It means your opponent won't be able to re-roll well, cast whatever card. So depending on the speed at which you get this out, you could be getting kind of ruined pretty quickly, because it could be as simple as, all right, activate Yoda, I've got a speed going plus whatever. They are also running force jump, so if they nuke your hand and then start force jumping your damage, it's just like, oh great, like that's not coming back, that's just sitting on blank. I got no choice in the matter. So like for right now, I'd probably put only those sets as the publicly known kind of tier 1 decks. We do have a vast amount of like tier 1.5 decks. Regardless of whether they've been doing well or not well, there tends to be kind of glaring weaknesses. So one of the more popular ones I would say is Beckett Towson. And now, so originally when I saw Beckett Towson, or people were trying to build Beckett Towson, I was like, man, that deck sucks. And in my mind, it was rightfully so. Like, I felt that it was kind of, one trickish. If any of your guys got bursted down, there was like a huge struggle there for damage. But the main dilemma was like the way that the deck operated, you could not generate, I guess, enough positive benefits in my mind for it to go kind of the long game. And I then, watched it get played a bit, and I was like, all right, this deck's actually much better than I thought. And then I played the deck, and everything that I thought before turned out to be true. So the deck boils down to this, at least to me. Assuming that you're playing against other good players, did I hit Beckett Rifle or Vader's Fist? No, I probably lost the game. It's like, sure, in theory, you can, start off with that energy bow, and like flip the damage and get in there and kind of win. But if there's like an overconfidence, there are feasible odds that you come out of that round crying inside. So like Towson's fix is really necessary for the deck. And let's say Beckett rolls out, he's 55% to show damage on his dice, but you do have the special to go and steal money from the opponent. The dilemma is that money is often not doing too much. If you don't have the fist, and you don't have, let's say, have the rifle, like the other stuff in the deck like all costs 1 except for a few of the zeros. So like, sure, you can hit a backup muscle, you can play removal, but like, let's say you're playing against Vader, like your questionable removal is really shitty, because like you don't have that 0-drop removal to like eat one of his dice, and then he puts it back in, and then now you try to do like a blowout. Like I ran in the crosshairs as a 1-of, and that did some interesting stuff, but when you don't pair that with like 0-drop removal versus Vader, that means you got to pay 4. Paying 4 to try to eat like 2 of his dice is real tough, man. Real tough. There is the benefits though. You do get Witch Magic and Force Illusion, so you can block really well. Those essentially trade as like a 1-for-1 for his dice. But like the overall struggle was just that, like, if you, let's say both players got a round where they really didn't do too much, Beckett Towson usually is the deck that's behind in that scenario, because if a deck's going like, all right, here's a fire spray, and now I got pumped, and then like you removed my dice and I removed your dice, like they have a fire spray and a freaking mod on it, and you're like, oh shit. Like even Vader, like let's say Vader eats, stops their dice enough, they grab like a resource or two, and you somehow stopped Vader's dice with your resources. If you didn't get any benefits there, and they have, let's say, like a Darksaber down, or pretty much a Vader Saber, you're already going to be way behind, because they can start, you know, half healthing guys or one shotting guys potentially, depending on like what it got in the prior round. Like if there's a round where both sides are doing like 2 to 3 damage, and the other, you know, Beckett Towson, unless they hit the rifle or hit like the fist, they're going to be in like a kind of a world of hurt. And both of those cards are unique, so if you hit the second copy, like you can't continue to ramp off of it. So like that was a kind of overwhelming dilemma I felt for the deck. There's a lot of like deflects running around, so you get that 3 and then it gets deflected. Like, it feels real bad because you've now lost 3 damage and took 2. You're a 20 health deck, so like it's a constant struggle, I felt, for that deck, and that's why I put it at 1.5. We have like Beckett Sienna, Waldo Harrison from Maine ran it at the New Hampshire Regional. Everything was kind of new. We were fresh off our nerf, and he crushed absolute face. I think he went undefeated through the entire event. I don't even know if he went to, he might have went to some game 3s, potentially, but he just straight murdered people. As the format kind of like fixed and adjusted itself, we found ourselves to be in a much more heavily, you know, aggro oriented format. And in the testing I found was that the deck could not protect itself well enough. So like if Sienna ever lived till round 3, you won the game. There's like no questions there. But Sienna hardly ever lived through like the middle of round 2. And what I mean by that is, I mean like the legit middle of round 2. Like, you know, both your opponent's dice rolled out and then she was probably dead. Like without any additional like upgrades or whatever. 9 health was just not enough. If she started with the battlefield, like, she could do some cool things there. It made it much easier to, you know, hit the fire spray and pay for like pay sides. And it's a big firefight for the deck, I felt. There is a lot of like hand mitigation, I guess, to try to stop whatever people are doing to stop you, which is really nice. But they lack, let's say, like the blue cards that help to keep her alive. Like, sure, they have He Doesn't Like You, and like Doubt, and then you could run stuff like Armor Plating and whatnot, but they have a more constant struggle against trying to actually stop Vader dice. Excuse me. Which is pretty problematic. There's also kind of a lack of focus in the deck, because, I mean, what I mean by lack of focus is like they can't focus sides well, so like they do have to naturally kind of roll into stuff. You're normally speaking okay with that, but if you're struggling with your resource consumption, you can't resolve Beckett 3s. The mod for the fire spray, you have to hit with something. You do have the 4 indirect on the fire spray, as well as was it the 3 direct ranged on the triple turret. And most of the mods like Artcaster and Dorsal have like the mod side, as well as, you know, indirect's really nice, except for when it can't take down your main target. So like indirect first and then the range is like perfectly fine, but if you gone from a prior round, hit like, you know, some range into a guy 4 or 5, now when you're seeing indirect, you know that's going to get spread to somewhere else, so you kind of need to hit the ranged. But like overall, like the deck plays out very well. If it gets enough time, I think it can pretty much beat any deck. The dilemma is getting that time that you need. It's quite a struggle for them to kind of get to that stage of like being able to keep her alive. The removal is just not that amazing. A lot of it costs resources, and you can't really like super protect her going to the next round. Like Witch Magic and Force Illusion don't exist there. Hidden Motive doesn't exist there. Like He Doesn't Like You is great, but you have to give up a die. Doubt is, you know, a gamble. They don't have access to like a flank. You do have all the spot yellows you could run, so you could risky move somebody, and probably be pretty content with that. It's just overall, it's always a constant struggle. But the deck does play out pretty well. What else we got? I'm trying to think like what make up. Like I think Jane Cass is trash. They do some decent aggro stuff. They do some decent mill stuff, but they don't do enough kind of like combined. If anybody's ever playing hero and they play against them, they kind of get like lit up, because the easy picking is they need to maintain battlefield control. Against like Vader very likely to start with the battlefield against them. So like it's much harder for them to kind of get going. They need the additional resource. They need the battlefield for a lot of their actual good removal. If they're not running those removal, then their removal is just much worse. Trying to think what I played against. Fish Sticks, Kid Ayla has some really good stuff going for it. I think against any of the aggressive decks, it tends to be in an okay spot because it can put out a lot of firepower on its own. Overall dilemma for them ends up going like mill kind of wrecks their shit. Anything with like a fire spray on tap or a shadowcaster on tap could also screw them over. Their damage can definitely come in real focused and take out something like Sienna, but if the opponent has any of like the cool tricks like it in the crosshairs or anything, they could end up pretty much not doing anything that round based on those. What else is there? Bobby Sapphire played Qui-Gon Ayla, bit of rivalry. I think a lot of that was him just playing a very solid deck and being Bobby Sapphire, so he doesn't go crush Swiss. And people really just not knowing what the hell's going on with that deck, because like you sit down and you're like, oh, it's Qui-Gon, but then like if you know who he is, you're like, Qui-Gon, what? And like Qui-Gon's big thing was that if your opponent wins battlefield roll, they give you shields because they took their Theed. Qui-Gon has his 2 shields, and now his shit's like, all right, well, I'll resolve this 2 shield side as 3 on Ayla, and you're just like, oh my god, like what's going on? Because there's just so much health there. Like they were at 24, now it's at 27, and like as you do damage, if you try to kill Ayla, like Qui-Gon can just put 3 shields on her, and it's like a caution every round. If you go after Qui-Gon, like he can shield himself for a little bit less, but it's a struggle to bust through all those shields, and so like they're getting small amounts of value right away. The Jedi robes, 2 more shields, the ability to focus. If he gets to the 3 shields to have that be 2 focus, like you are looking at some scary ass die sides, because then you're looking at what 2 melee, 3 melee, 3 shield, 3 shield, 2 resources. That's like, it tries its best to be Vader-esque right there, So scary level shit. I'll give it the 1.5 for now, but I think a lot of that was backed by Boba just playing really strong. What else is there? Like I'm missing all sorts of decks here. We think Top Cut had what? Tarkin Snoke. Tarkin Snoke actually seemed really good against a lot of the different things that are seeing play. I think it pretty much gets wrecked if anyone can focus down either the guys very fast or just output massive amounts of damage. So like the dilemma is that trying to maintain a hand versus Tarkin Snoke is really hard, because if Tarkin hits either that 2 discard side and you can't just get rid of it, like your hand's getting nuked right there. If they got like a 4 speed down on Snoke, you could be seeing like a focus into a Snoke 4 discard, which is really just gonna wreck your round. You're gonna have to like natural roll out damage. They have like anger and different stuff going on there. You got Vader's Fist, which they can hit and like get you with. One of the big things with that deck, it looks like, is like, all right, so if they go for like a 4 discard, but like Vader rolls out and hits natural damage, like that's going to be a real struggle for them. I think if Vader maintained battlefield control, which happens because that deck activates and does actions real slow, that they could be looking at like a rollout into dying. Because their removal kind of requires, like the angers require their dice in the pool, Inferior Anger requires your opponent to hit like a blank. Deflect doesn't work on actual Vader's dice, but it works on, Vader's Fist and whatnot. I need sunglasses. Do I have sunglasses? I don't got sunglasses. Sorry, 1 second, I'm brain fried after the sun. So like I can see where that deck has issues with any of the aggressive decks that can come out firing, because they have like a bunch of situational removal. So I did not get to watch the final match of Connecticut. I was too busy getting my fungos with my bros. And anyone that's wondering, Mufungos is like this plantain or the green banana with a bunch of other stuff like squashed in together. So I think Tarkin Snoke could be very good against the decks that really pretty much aren't Vader, but could struggle against Vader himself potentially. And like, if there's a lot of people going away from Vader, then that could be a good play. I don't know how it plays out against Mill, just because it goes back to a lot of their situational removal. Angering or trying to anger versus Mill kind of just doesn't apply. Deflect versus Mill probably doesn't apply. So like a lot of the removal goes away, but pretty much whatever die size they're hitting, they could come in with damage. Target them for 4, discard, and they're just like, oh shit. You target for 4 indirect, and then you just power action. You're also in a really good spot. So like if you're getting 8 around versus Mill, like I think you're pretty happy there. So maybe they're in a good spot versus Mill. I get to see there being extreme struggles versus things like easy picking. Kind of like just pretty much that. And then if you're playing against villain players that are running Fear Your Anger, they're just like, you're like, oh shit. So we also did see Thrawn Snoke make a comeback. Manton was playing it. So Tarkin Snoke was Golden Dice Podcast Jack. He finished second place. We also saw Thrawn Snoke being played by Manton. Bit of rivalry, obviously, and that was kind of throwbackish. In that, like, that event, there were a bunch of us just like, what's really good, or like, because like Mill came back, right, and we're like, all right, well, let's go back in time. Mill was doing really good. Then what came out to crush Mill? Snoke got nerfed. I don't care. Alright, let's run Snoke. And a bunch of us were running Snoke because we're jackasses. So like, the rumors of Snoke's demise, the rumors of Smoke, I suck. Rumors of Snoke's demise were really exaggerated. Unfortunately, I don't edit my videos, so that shit's gonna stay there. But Snoke's still really, really good. It's really going to boil down to like what you're doing with the deck, but like I'm playing with Snoke deck. These other guys I respect are playing Snoke decks, so Snoke's not dead. I have no idea how Manton played Thrawn Snoke and was sitting in round 6 as a 5-0. But like at the same time, I'm just like, Qui-Gon Ayla also did that shit, and I'm just like, I'm flabbergasted. I got ruined by fish sticks. Let's talk about fish sticks. Fish sticks get Ayla. I think I already talked about fish sticks. I think I talked about them in Qui-Gon Ayla. But yeah, they can struggle if their hearing gets ruined and they don't get some good die sides, or if you can kind of focus one of their guys down pretty fast. I tried focusing down Kit, and like his 3-for-1 kept blocking my damage, and that was ugly. Our buddy Zardra, or Jeff, was playing it, and he took my ass out in round 2, and then I went and won the rest of my rounds. He actually ended up getting into top 8 with tiebreakers, so him playing me round 2 was probably super beneficial there. What else is there? I've heard about the Iden Towson decks, one with, I think, Blockade, one with Armored Reinforcement. I think they're definitely very interesting. No idea how good they actually are. I have not sat down across from them, but we could probably consider putting them in the 1.5 deck tier. If they like lose to aggro, then it would make sense, because a lot of those 2-character decks with like smaller health pools are struggling against aggro. They can go and crush Vader because they can go and put a bunch of direct damage into him, but the removal suite's always just kind of really tough right now with villain, because they're actually, I guess, not too tough. The removal with red's usually a struggle, because red removal sucks. Like, I'm trying to think of like any of the red removal that was good, and this is like, alright, if I have a little shitty guy, best defense is like serviceable. If you hit a mode of a Vader die and then you best defense the other 2 die, you're like jackpot. Because you're like, I took 3 to the guy I don't care about. But other than that, you're just like, I don't want to take 3 to stop like, what, 4 or 5 damage? Ugh. But like, if the guy's shitty, it's like, alright, deal. But if he's like your main guy, like if you're playing like Thrawn Snoke, it's really hard for you to try to like feasibly run the best defense. It's no bueno. But I'm trying to think what else is there. I think Yodelay at 3 has pretty much gone the way of the Dodo. It has not been playing out particularly good at all. Back in the New Hampshire regional, we saw like a bunch of the players playing that get fucking ruined. Like the doing AoE is cool. It's just like if your Leia dies are getting eaten and they're smashing damage back into you, it's a constant struggle for you to stay alive. Like Yoda decks have to be doing completely broken things because getting the resources is just not as beneficial as like, oh, I got 3 or 4 damage out of this instead. Like my helper guy, because getting like 6 or 7 into a guy and then he's gonna die next round, even through like a single piece of mitigation, is really just like the winning formula, I guess, right now. What else is there? I think a lot of the Han decks seem really trashy. I haven't heard from Han Kira in a while. The mono yellow seems really interesting, but like it's like always this constant issue, right? Like if you're playing a 2-character deck and we're playing pretty much the honest sarcastic way of playing is by round 2 I'm going to kill your guy so that you have less dice and you constantly struggle more. A lot of those decks can't hold a candle to Vader because the health is too large. So like sure, maybe they get that 6 damage in round 1, but if they only get to say like 4 more in round 2 and one of their guys died, now it just makes it easier for him to actually survive the subsequent round on like a piece of mitigation, and now we're like potentially looking at a rise again here. He also has access to Force Illusion and motives, so sometimes you'll lose 4 damage to a Force Illusion because you had a 2 and a +2. Gun decks are very, in particular, are really screwed by mods. Man, I shifted too early. Completely screwed by mods once they run into things like Force Illusion and whatnot. So once again, it's back to like a constant struggle there. And like maybe this goes to show that like Vader is tier 1 and the gatekeeper at the same time. You can't go and play a deck if you can't beat Vader. If you have an auto loss match to Vader, you can't be playing that deck in this format, and that's hugely relevant. And like that's kind of what a gatekeeper deck is. It means like you can't go to the tournament with this deck if you can't beat it because this deck is always around. In like the older formats, we used to have like Palpatine being gatekeeper for a while because like Palpatine was around. He didn't win anything though. Poe Maz was a gatekeeper deck that won because if you try to play 3-wide and you couldn't keep up with Poe Maz, like you were dominated. You take a thermal and then a U-wing and the game probably ended because you took some 2s and 3s in between there and everything died. Or you take like 2 thermals to the face and the game's over. I definitely know Bobby Sapphire had round 2 to guy in Michigan that was running like 3 characters or something like that before the opponent got to go and kind of roll out in round 2. He like hit and run killed it. He like thermal like hit and run U-winged or something like that, and like maybe threw a rocket. And it was just like, oh, you're a great guy, Bobby Sapphire. You made that guy fucking quit the game. Good job, asshole. But I think there's some Dooku Towson running around. I don't know the level that it's at. It seemed like it operated pretty well. I just don't know if they struggle with trying to try to keep feed because they kind of would need it. And overall, like most of their removal costing 1, like the Towson's big issue with like the removal costing 1 can be a huge drastic downfall. Because like the 0-drop removal is really necessary, I feel like, in the beta format, where you want to eat one of his dice for free so he pulls it out, and then you want to go blow up his dice again. And like you can't be spending 2 resources to try to eat one of his dice because the blowback is that you didn't have the resources to then do anything else with. So if you're constantly trying to do that, then he's still getting to resolve one of his dice and put out like an upgrade out or finally hit like a fist, and then you're dead. Because like Vader's fist is just a ridiculous amount of damage. You can only kind of like hope to slow Vader's fist down or erase it. Trying to stop Vader's fist is just a job that I don't think I've seen anyone be capable of doing. Like, Flames of the Past on Vader's Fist, like, sure. And definitely something you can consider when you run kind of your own Vader's Fist, because then, like, it gives you an answer there, but probably not a good answer unless you're Mill. And Mill doesn't really get to run Vader's Fist because Mill's fucking hero. I've seen Han decks try to play. I think the issue with Han is that his special's so good that you want to run Han, but you can't reliably get his special. So since you can't reliably get a special, you don't get like that extreme value that you were expecting. And as a 15-point character, after that, he's not super amazing. He has that discard side, which you don't want to see. So you can kind of like equate it to a blank most of the time. And like that's bad. Because like you're looking, all right, I rolled out, I got like 4 damage in, or 2 in a resource, and like that's not some overwhelming thing. And then it's just like, oh well, I have Seed. It's like, motherfucker, you only got 1 action out of that, all right? And the problem is that because you're playing Han, he has an average die side roll for 1 for each of his dice. So what's this fucking partner? His partner's probably the same if he's lucky, like 1, maybe a little more than that. Like what Kira has 1.5, so like they have an average I think of 5, because she's 2, 3, 1, 1 plus 2. Yeah, so she has a 1.5 average. So like at that point they have an average roll off of 5, and you're like, all right, I'm in a good spot. But I think an average roll off of 5 is probably still like 40-60 or 45-55 versus Vader. And like that pay side's brutal, and you don't have like some crazy effect that's doing much. Like you only get neutral upgrades and supports. You can have those cool ass yellow events, but that are like villain or hero, but like past that, like you don't get much else. So like they struggle in some of those matchups, and I know personally that they struggle in like the Vader matchup. Wanton Destruction, I have no idea how to say that name. I like to call it Wonton, but that seemed like one of the more playable cards to help in that match. Vader rolls out, he's kind of big, and you're just like, well, fuck it, take like 6. And like they don't have access to like second chance and stuff like that. Excuse me. They do get like he doesn't like you, easy picking, double cross, but they do have to have money, and they can definitely make money, but you lose part of Han's special if you don't have enough hero events, because you can't run hero anything else. But when he does hit the special and he like gets himself a resource and then disrupts the opponent, that's ridiculous. But like Han Kira seems solid. They just all have weaknesses. This motherfucker knows he needs to be leaving space open for. Oh. Whee! But yeah, so I've pretty much made it to my destination for the most part. And I definitely feel like I'm missing decks. Like there's just so much shit that's being played right now. So like maybe you can kind of think of it as like an open meta. And it's open meta as far as like feasibility, but it's not an open meta as far as like strength. It's not like when we were playing what the hell was it? Like the end of Legacies for like the 17th month. And it just felt like there was a bunch of decks that were viable. At the end of that, we found out that like Stairs, which was like Rayla, Sabine, and then Drive-By, which is like the Rainbow Vehicle Gun deck, were like the actual like best decks, and the other stuff just tried its best to hang with it. But for a while there, like it felt like you could play anything and win, which is kind of correct. Like you can play and win with probably anything, but Vader and Mill are like a much easier time. But that's all I got for you guys today. Thanks for listening. Comment and subscribe. You guys got any stuff to say? Feel free to leave a comment. I'll try to check in when I can. The 3 of us have access to the YouTube page, so you could be getting answers from any of us. And it's nice sometimes if you have a question to just throw it out there. Please do not send me deck lists and ask for my point. because that's what Patreon and Discord is for. But you guys have a great one. Thanks for watching. And I hope you don't hate Tier List as much as Bobby Sapphire. Deuces!